Today we're talking about remembering and reincarnation and the idea that you already know everything. And that might seem kind of weird because there are obviously a lot of things that you seemingly don't know, but we're going to talk about the idea that you actually do have the eternal knowledge of necessary truths within you right now already. It's just up to you to remember or uncover them. And this also answers a sort of a question or statement that I get from a lot of people who encounter Hyperianism, is that they say, wow, it really feels like this is something that I've known my whole life, or that I'm not actually learning it. I'm just sort of remembering it or awakening to it. And so that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So Plato believed that all learning was actually just remembering or recollection. So we have a lot to talk about here. And what I'm going to do is sort of read from this article talking about Plato's ideas and then discuss what he means and tell you what he got right, what he got wrong, and how it all fits into the actuality of reality and what's actually happening here. So let's just jump right into this. It might seem a little vague at first, but I'll explain as we go through. So one of the most famous passages in all of Plato's works, indeed in all of philosophy, occurs in the middle of the Meno. Meno asks Socrates if he can prove the truth of his strange claim that all learning is actually recollection. So Socrates responds by calling over an enslaved boy, and after establishing that he has no mathematical training, gives him a geometry problem. Now this is very appropriate, given that in Hyperianism, we are mathematical beings. Now, for those who are new, let me just give you a quick rundown of what I am even talking about here, because we're talking about reincarnation, we're talking about knowledge, we're talking about remembering. And if you're new here, a lot of people probably come in with this preconceived idea of what reincarnation is. Now, I want to tell you right off the bat, in Hyperianism, reincarnation has nothing to do with faith or karma or any of that. It's a completely mathematical and rational process. So we as Hyperians are rationalists, idealists, meaning that reality is mind, reality is mathematical, because it's a mathematical idealism. That means it's mathematical mind. So what this means is that all reality is actually mathematical. Now this is living math in terms of frequency, meaning that there is a qualitative experiential content associated with every frequency, every mathematical frequency, every mathematical sinusoid. This is, keep in mind, this is a very brief summary. So I have a lot of other videos on reincarnation and Hyperianism in general, but just to give you a quick rundown. Now, all of us are what's known as eternal monadic minds. So each and every one of us is an eternal mind. We aren't our bodies. We are an eternal mind, which is a collection of frequencies, sinusoidal waves, complete basis waves, meaning that we're all mathematical, eternal mathematical entities, eternal mathematical minds. We exist in a mental domain and in a frequency domain, the source singularity. Now, space-time, what we call the holos, eventually develops through a mathematical process, avatars. And avatars, being the brain, having a brain and nervous system, is what allows minds to link to a body and localize in the holos. So bodies, brain, nervous system, etc., allows a monadic mind, which is what you truly are, to localize in space-time, what we call the holos. So I even like to say sometimes, instead of reincarnation, I sometimes like to say relocalization, because it's a completely mathematical process, and I want to detach the idea of having it to do with like mysticism or faith or karma or anything like that. It's completely irrational. Now, so the big question is, why do we reincarnate, or why do we relocalize? Why do we incarnate in the first place? Why do we localize in the first place? And the reason why that we localize or incarnate in the first place and continue to reincarnate and relocalize is for the purpose of evolution, learning, growing, understanding, and expressing. And you might be thinking, well, wait, if you know everything already, why do you need to incarnate or localize into the holos? Why would you need to do that if you know everything already? It's a very good question, and that's exactly what we're going to answer. How you already know everything, and if you already know everything, what's the purpose of, why do we localize? Why do we incarnate? All this. So, as I just said, Meno asks Socrates if he can prove the truth of his strange claim that all learning is recollection. And Socrates responds by calling over an enslaved boy. And this boy has no mathematical training. And so Socrates gives this boy a geometry problem. By the way, this article is from thoughtco.com. Good article. Good website. So the boy is asked to, goddamn ad is playing, fucking capitalism. The boy is asked how to double the area of a square. So his confident first answer is that you achieve this by doubling the length of the sides. But Socrates shows him that this, in fact, creates a square 4 times larger than the original. The boy then suggests extending the sides by half their length. Socrates points out that this would turn a 2x2 square into a 3x3 square. At this point, the boy gives up and declares himself at a loss. So Socrates then guides him by means of a simple step-by-step questions to the correct answer, which is to use that diagonal of the original square as the base of the new square. So basically, this boy has no mathematical training whatsoever. Socrates gives him a geometry problem. He's trying to figure it out. He can't. And Socrates shows him how to solve the problem. So let's start breaking this down. So according to Socrates, the boy's ability to reach the truth and recognize it as such proves that he already had this knowledge within him. The questions he was asked simply stirred it up, making it easier for him to recollect it. He argues further that since the boy didn't acquire such knowledge in this life, he must have acquired it at some earlier time. In fact, Socrates says he must have always known it, which indicates that the soul is immortal. Moreover, what has been shown for geometry also holds for every other branch of knowledge. The soul, in some sense, already possesses the truth about all things. Okay, so basically what Socrates is saying here is that, and this is through Plato, by the way. Plato always, puts some of uses Socrates as a vehicle to express his philosophy. So these are Plato's ideas. But Socrates, through this story, Socrates is saying that basically that his questions and guiding the boy to the answer to this geometry problem isn't really teaching him anything. It's stirring up what's already there. And so Socrates / Plato is saying that the soul is immortal and already has this knowledge within it. It just needs to be stirred up. So let's talk about this. See what's right, see what's wrong. Now, in their concept of the soul, in Hyperianism, we have the monadic mind, the eternal mind, which is this collection of frequency patterns. It's a mathematical structure. You can call it the soul if you'd like, but I don't like the religious mystical connotation that soul has, but you could call it that if you like. Same thing with reincarnation versus relocalization, or, the soul / monadic mind. Same / similar concepts, but it's important to disassociate that mysticism and religiosity that this world has imposed upon these concepts that should not be there. So here's the idea. We are eternal mathematical minds. That's what we are. So within all of us, we have the eternal necessary truths of mathematics within us all the time, because we are mathematical. That's what we are. And remember, in Hyperianism, this is living frequency. So in terms of not just abstract scratch marks on paper, mathematical notation, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about living mathematics, still extremely rationally structured, like how mathematics is, but in terms of living frequency patterns that has a dual aspect to it, and it carries with it a qualitative experiential aspect. So all of us are eternal mathematical minds. And essentially what this means, because all of reality is mathematical. All of reality is just a projection from the frequency domain, a space-time transformation of a frequency domain. So it is us experiencing, when we experience reality around us, we are experiencing the mathematical nature of reality projected as space-time functions, and we are experiencing the qualitative aspect of it. So it's a little bit like the Matrix. Not exactly like it, but it's a little bit like it, in that in the Matrix, they're experiencing this world that's actually code, and that there's really a more real, more fundamental world. Kind of like that, but not exactly. Because what the real fundamental world is a completely mathematical frequency domain. And then the holos, the space-time domain, is still a mathematical domain, but it's in terms of space and time. It's a localized realm, and we are qualitatively experiencing it. So what this means is, for example, let's take a rainbow. A rainbow is a mathematical structure. It is frequency patterns, but when we experience that rainbow, we aren't consciously experiencing the formal mathematical aspect of it. We're experiencing the content that that formal mathematical aspect conveys, meaning color. We have the experience of color. But how is that color conveyed? Only by the fact that that color is conveyed by mathematical frequency, and we are mathematical beings that can experience that mathematical frequency. Okay? So all reality is mathematical. All reality is frequency, just transformed and projected a certain way. Remember, if you want more info on that, I have a lot of videos on it, but we gotta, I gotta keep this short. I can't do complete expositions on every single video. It'd be crazy long. So all reality is mathematical. We are mathematical beings. Each and every one of us is a complete and consistent set of mathematics, meaning we have the entirety of mathematics within us because we must, because this must be so. This must be the case. Mathematics can never be incomplete, and each and every single one of us is a complete and consistent set of mathematics. You can't have half of math because, for example, all math implies each other. You can't have a 1 that just exists by itself. 1 implies -1. So taking this idea further, all of math is a structure that implies each other. You have to have it together as a whole group, a whole set, a whole structure that's complete and consistent, Gödelian and all that. It has to be complete and consistent. You can't have pieces of it. It's impossible. So each and every single one of us is a complete and consistent set of mathematics. What this means is that we have essentially the code of reality imprinted within us. So imagine it being like you exist in a computer-generated world, but you have all of the code already in your mind as well. It's what it's kind of like. All of this reality is a mathematical reality. And since we are mathematical beings that are complete and consistent sets, we have the data of reality imprinted within us. Now, it's important to understand that this data that we have imprinted, because you might be thinking, well, wait, you said that we reincarnate or relocalize into the space-time domain in order to learn, experience, and grow. Why would we do that if we already have all the information imprinted within us? And that's a very good question. The answer is that we have within us the necessary eternal truths of existence unconsciously. So when we relocalize into the space-time environment, the holos, what this allows us to do, we're going to do two things here. One, we are going to be able to make the unconscious conscious, what is implicit explicit, what is covered uncovered. And in addition to that, we also have the experience and gaining of knowledge of the contingent transformations of that code, which is different than the necessary eternal truths of of mathematics and of all reality. And the way to understand this is if you imagine that we are drawing from the computer metaphor, because I think it's a very helpful metaphor. Now, I want to emphasize, I don't mean this literally. We're not literally living in a computer simulation or anything like this. This is a reality of living mathematical frequency of pure mind that can transform itself and projects itself into a space-time representation. But if we take this sort of metaphor of a computer world, imagine that you have the code of, you have all the code within your mind. Imagine that, okay? But imagine that it's unconscious in that it's there, but you don't know that it's there. And there is so much going on in your unconscious that you are completely unaware of. There are you even have memories right? You have a lot going on that is not conscious right now. You have your memories, which are sort of pre-conscious, in that they're not in your consciousness right now, but if you wanted to, you could go back and retrieve them. Because right now, the only thing that's in your consciousness is what's happening in front of you, this video, if you're paying attention, which you should be. But if I were to say, oh, what did you have for dinner yesterday? You could go, access your pre-conscious, retrieve it, and bring it into consciousness. And so it wasn't in your conscious now, but you could retrieve it if you wanted to. Now, you have a vast amount of information that is unconscious, which means you can't retrieve it, or at least it would be extremely difficult to retrieve it. And Hyperionism is all about retrieving that information. So it's not impossible, it's just very difficult. But you have all this information residing within your unconscious. And there are different levels. You have all these, like in Hyperionism, we talk about the different structures, like your shadow self, your mirror self, your power self, all these different archetypal structures in your unconscious that you can have access to. But you have a lot of processes happening in your unconscious mind. For example, if you're going to throw a baseball, your act of just throwing a baseball has immensely complex mathematical calculations going on in your unconscious. You're doing all these, angle, velocity, but it's all happening unconsciously. It just happens, all you do is throw the ball. Same thing when you just do something like walk around the room. All of these processes are immensely complex. All these complex processes are running, but they're not running consciously. You're just doing the things that you do. So my point is in saying this is that there is a lot in your unconscious going on that you are unaware of. So in our metaphor of the computer programmer, or not the computer programmer, you have all the access to the code, or I'm sorry, you have all the code imprinted, but this code is unconscious. So it's not explicit, it's implicit. And so when let's say that there's a game world, a video game world that's generated by that code. So what you can do is access one of the game characters to allow yourself as the code to enter into that game world. So you have all this, you as an eternal, in our metaphor, you are this eternal code, but you can enter into a game world by accessing a game character. And this is an unconscious process. Now, what you can do in that game world is begin to learn and understand. Now, at first, you're going to think that game world is real because this is all unconscious. So you're not even going to know it's a game world. You're going to think it's a real world. You're not going to know that you're code. You're going to think that you're that avatar. You're not going to know that the world is code. You're going to think that you're actually that avatar, that the game world is actually real. You're going to meet other avatars that think that, that their avatars are real. They don't know their code. But what's going to happen? You're going to start learning, exploring. You guys are going to start, analyzing the game world, start to be like, hey, it seems like that everything follows certain rules, a certain pattern. Let's figure this out. So what you guys are doing are learning about yourselves, even though you have this, the code already within you unconsciously, you're making it conscious. You're making it explicit. So that's very important. And that's one element to it. The other element to it, the second element to it, has to do with contingency, in that in addition to be able to discovering these, being able to make conscious these necessary eternal truths that already are imprinted within you eternally, you also can explore the contingent transformations of the code. And what I mean by contingent transformations of the code is the code can take on many different forms. And you can think of this in like, look at how many different video games are out there. You can take computer code and from that code create many different types of transformations of that code that result in many different types of video games. So you have this opportunity to explore yourself as the code, but transformed in many different ways. You're exploring your various transformations. Okay, so putting this together in terms, kind of stepping away from metaphors for a minute here. Hold on just a minute. Sorry about that. I spilled some coffee on me earlier. So stepping away from metaphors for a minute here. You are this. You are a mathematical mind, a mathematical monadic mind that localizes into or incarnates into the realm of space-time, the so-called physical world, but it itself is just an expression of a mathematical reality. And you have this mathematical reality imprinted within your mind. And so what you are doing here, and this is all coming together to what we're going to be talking about recollection and remembrance and all that. What you are doing here is making what is unconscious conscious, making what is implicit explicit. And in what this means, especially in terms of Hyperianism, is that very, very often, and I mentioned this in the intro, very often people come to me. In the live stream today, someone said it, and they didn't even see the intro. They didn't see the intro. But someone said, I get this all the time, that, oh, wow, it doesn't seem that, it seems like this is something I've known my whole life. It seems like just something that, I've always known, and I'm just now remembering it. Now, the reason why this is because you already know this. Just it's unconscious. It's becoming uncovered. Sort of like how, in the story here, Socrates is helping uncover the answer to the geometry problem in the boy's mind. Kind of sort of like that. So what's happening is that you have the structure of how reality operates already within you eternally. It's just unconscious. And so when you come across that information, it's becoming uncovered. And this is because reality follows this mathematical pattern, there is this Hyperianism is the what we want to do is just uncover all this information for humanity as a whole. We want to bring humanity to a new level of consciousness by making that unconsciousness into consciousness. We want people to realize what they are, where they are, and why they are here. And we want them to do it in a rational way. And we want people to be able to truly understand this. And the thing is that this information is already within everybody. It's just becoming uncovered. And this is, again, because reality follows this natural pattern, because it's a mathematical pattern. And so for example, something like evolution. Evolution is a necessary consequence of the way mathematics, the world is mathematically coded, so to speak. However, the particular way that evolution takes shape is contingent. So what I mean by this is everyone has the innate idea of an evolving transformation and a progression within themselves. But the particular contingent way that it takes place is not. For example, particular kinds of species that evolve or arise. that is contingent. And that is not within everyone because it's contingent. But the necessary eternal aspect of evolution itself is. And why is that? That's because the process of evolution in general, the way we experience it, is simply a reflection, a representation of the mathematical process of transformation. So the mathematical process of transformation, this is all mental transformation. This is mental evolution. It's all frequencies evolving and transforming into different patterns. We have evolving mathematical patterns, transforming mathematical patterns. If you want a visual to try and put to it, think of like a kaleidoscope or a fractal or something like this. Kaleidoscope is a good image, right? These evolving mathematical patterns. Someone who's done psychedelics probably sees this, knows this visual representation. Evolving mathematical patterns. And this idea of evolving patterns is within all of us. How this expresses itself in space-time, in the holos, is evolution. Because everything is just an expression of the mathematical process. Just like a video game, everything is a process of the code. So, let's imagine a video game. Imagine you're playing a very complex video game, and evolution is happening in that video game. Well, what's really behind the scenes, it's just numbers transforming or code transforming. Well, same thing here. Behind the scenes, we have frequencies transforming. And how this gets represented is through, the evolution in space-time. So you see how there's this sort of in the background process happening, and then a space-time representation of it. And so basically, when people come up and say, "Oh, I, feel like this is something I've known all my life," there are two things that are happening here. One is that, because you have the necessary eternal code, the blueprint of reality already within you. It's already there. You already have that information in you. It's just becoming uncovered. It's just, rising up from the depths of the sea to the surface. So it's already there. And that's one reason. Another reason could be that you were involved with or taught something similar in a past life. Now, this is now contingent. It's not guaranteed that that's the case because you already have the necessary eternal laws inbuilt. But it could also be the case, possibly, that in a past life, you have, learned something similar. And that has been, sort of carried over. Now, that's not guaranteed. But I'm putting it out there because it is a possibility. But the important aspect of it too really relies on these necessary eternal truths, because you're going through this process of reincarnation or relocalization because you yourself are an evolving mind, an evolving mathematical structure. And you are converting your potentiality into actuality by making the unconscious conscious or the implicit explicit. And so through your learning and understanding in the world, and increases your capacity to do this. So you're increasing your rationality. And this, because you are this transforming mathematical mind, your transformations, your evolution gets carried over. It's like you keep making progress, because when your avatar passes away, it's not like you start over from square one. It's you have acquired mathematical evolution through that process. Now you're going to link to a new avatar, and through your experiences and growth and understanding in that new avatar, this is going to continue to work on your mathematical evolution. Now, certain lives are going to contribute it more to others. If you have a life where you just sit and watch Netflix all day and don't do any learning or understanding, it's not going to contribute much, if at all, to any mental evolution. But if it's a life where you work on, understanding, questioning, creating art, experiencing, growing, studying philosophy, learning how to reason, especially learning Hyperionism, because Hyperionism is like a cheat code almost to get you to that consciousness in a very short amount of time, comparatively speaking. What Hyperionism can do for you in one lifetime is something that would take, thousands of lifetimes otherwise. So this process of reincarnation or relocalization is contributing to your mental evolution. And so, when you come across information like this, depending on, how much has been uncovered in or how much growth you have gone through, it can seem like that this is something that you already know, because you do already know it. You just have to make it conscious. And that is why a lot of this information having to do with, like reality not being actually physical, that it's mental, that it's a mathematical reality, that we are all eternal minds, that we're all heading towards, the omega point, the source singularity, that we all are actually one and many at the same time, that we are one network mind experiencing each other in a multiplicity, in a myriad through localization in the holos. All these elements are necessary eternal truths that and are already within you. And the reason why it seems like that is because Hyperionism is just explicitly making what is implicit. It's sort of like, in the video game world going, hey guys, here's the code, here's how it works. And everyone in the video game going like, wow, this seems really familiar. So yeah, because you are the code, and you're just, coming to awareness of it now. So that's the important point. And then in addition to that, of course, we also have so again, reincarnation / relocalization has sort of two important factors. One, to make what is unconscious conscious, and then two, to explore ourselves in our various contingent transformations. There are many different transformations that the world can take. So what I mean by that is, the pattern of reality is necessary and eternal, meaning what I just described to you, the omega point, the fact that there's transformation and evolution, that we're all eternal mathematical minds, all that is necessary and eternal. But how that expresses itself contingently can vary. It might occur on planet Earth, where we go through a period of evolution where dinosaurs exist, and the United States develop, and that there's a continent, Europe, and all these different things. So that didn't have to happen, is what I mean. These are contingent aspects of reality. It could have been the case that it wasn't Earth, that you were born on, some other planet, or evolution took a different course where dinosaurs didn't exist. Or what I mean is that those contingent details are the various transformations that we can take. And you see how these details are different than the overarching pattern in general. It doesn't matter what country develops. Doesn't matter what people, what historic figures there are. That pattern is going to stay the same. The fact that there were all eternal minds, that we're on a path of evolution, that we're going towards the omega point, that reality is mathematical, that reality is mental, that's always true all the time, forever, eternally. Never was not true, always will be true forever. But that can take on various different expressions, various different experiences, vast multiplicity, near infinite, myriad transformations. Just like you can take the letters in the alphabet that are always the same and form words with those letters, and then form books, and you can form many different types of books. Kind of like that. Not exactly like that, but kind of like that. So we relocalize or reincarnate for two reasons: to make the unconscious conscious, and to explore, learn, and grow in our various transformations. We want to experience each other in our multiplicity, in the various ways we can experience each other. It's kind of like the computer code, wanting to see all the different kinds of games it can make, and want to play all those games and all the different avatars it can interact with, and have that joy and growth and experience from doing so, while learning and understanding that it is the code. And that's a really an important thing that I want to emphasize. It's important to have this balance of learning, understanding, and growing. It's extremely important, but you also want to enjoy yourself. You also want to play those games. You also want to have the joy of experiencing each other and enjoying life, because reality is all about learning, understanding, and growth. But it also, in addition to that, it's about enjoying our experience as well, because we are having this experience of multiplicity, and so it's important to also be able to have that enjoyment. So it's important to have that balance of absolutely reaching for knowledge, transformation, and growth, but also enjoy the journey, right? We have that journey, we have that place that we're going, but enjoy the journey as well. So let's see a little more. Let me see how much more. Oh, wow. Okay. God, I always go on way too long. Let me try and get through this kind of fast, because we've already gone for a while. So, continuing here, hopefully you remember what this article was even about. One view is that the passage proves that we have innate ideas, a kind of knowledge we are quite literally born with. Yes, that's what we were talking about in Hyperianism. You are born with these innate ideas. They're just unconscious. You have them even before you're born. You're an eternal monadic mind. You have them all the time. You never don't have them. They are what you are. It's like if you are the code, you never don't. You never don't not have the code. You always have the code because you are the code. Same with the mathematical. You are a being of living mathematical structure, so you always have that. It's just not explicitly conscious. And that might be hard for some to understand, but it's really not. It's if you are the mathematical code, you are that. So it is you, it is within you. But you have to develop self-awareness. And I don't mean self-awareness in terms of what humanity understands. I mean hyper-awareness, in that you understand that you are the code in all reality. So do you see there's a difference? There's a difference between just being the code, which you are, and so you have it all within you, and then reflecting and realizing, oh, I am it. So see, there's a big difference. And this is what I mean by making the unconscious conscious. It's already there. You are it. It's you. But you got to bring it to the surface. You got to become, in Hyperianism, this is part of becoming hyper-aware. So this doctrine is one of the most disputed in the history of philosophy. Descartes, who was greatly influenced by Plato, defended it. So he argues, for instance, that God imprints an idea of himself on each mind that he creates. Since every human being possesses this idea, faith in God is available to all. And because the idea of God is the idea of an infinitely perfect being, it makes possible other knowledge, which depends on the notions of infinity and perfection, notions that we could never arrive at from experience. So Descartes gets it kind of half right. He gets the idea right that you have innate ideas, but he goes off into this wild idea of trying to prove the existence of God. And see, this is where his failure is, because he doesn't realize that we are God. And so yes, God imprints upon all of us because we are God and we're self-imprinted. So again, throw out the idea of God. See, words like God, soul, reincarnation, it just carries all this baggage. You know, we have relocalization, we have monadic minds, and then we have what we are as the source singularity, as the absolute. And so, you know, there's not this idea of this creator God that's imprinting you with knowledge and innate ideas. No, that's not true. That's provably not true. The idea of a creator God is provably untrue. And it is, by the way. A lot of empiricists, atheistic materialists think it's not. It absolutely is. A creator God violates the necessary eternal laws of existence, and since it violates the PSR, it's therefore impossible. You just have to really understand what the definition. You have to talk about the specific creator God, right? So in those terms, I'm talking about specifically the Christian creator God is definitively, provably false, but you have to clearly define what God you're talking about and the attributes of that God to be able to do so, and then you find the contradictions within those attributes. But anyway, let me just stick to this so that we can get through this. So the doctrine of innate ideas is closely associated with the rationalist philosophies of thinkers like Descartes and Leibniz. It was fiercely attacked by John Locke, the first of the major British empiricists. So it's important to understand that in philosophy, thinkers like Leibniz are very important to Hyperianism. Descartes as well, and Hegel as well. Now, we don't agree with everything these philosophers say. There's a lot of other philosophers and philosophies that we draw from, and we synthesize them all together. We get rid of what is fallacious, and we synthesize and augment what is true. And so, yeah, this idea was important for Leibniz. And guess what? Leibniz had the idea that this was a mental reality formed by what he called monads. Now, our idea of monadic minds are a little different than Leibniz's, but Leibniz came extremely close to understanding the truth of reality. Leibniz was incredibly important, by the way. He came up with, he invented, or rather discovered, calculus, and he invented binary. And these are just a couple of his achievements. Monumental genius. But he shared the same idea that we have these innate ideas. Now, and by the way, we are highly opposed to empiricists. We're rationalists. Important to understand the difference between empiricism and rationalism. Most people don't. Most people conflate the two, and they're actually opposed. They're diametrically opposed. So we are rationalists, not empiricists. So Chomsky was struck by the remarkable achievement of every child in learning language. Within 3 years, most children have mastered their native language to such an extent that they can produce an unlimited number of original sentences. This ability goes far beyond what they can have learned simply by listening to what others say. The output exceeds the input. Chomsky argues that what makes this possible is innate capacity for learning language, a capacity that involves intuitively recognizing what he calls the universal grammar, the deep structure that all human languages share. And this is an interesting idea by Chomsky and a very intuitive observation. But the truth is that the innate ideas that children are born with, and again, going even previously to being born because they're eternally implemented, isn't sort of a universal grammar structure, but rather the universal structure of mathematics, which language derives from. So he came very, very close, but it's not that we're all inbuilt with eternal grammatical structure. We're inbuilt with eternal mathematical structure from which language is derived. So a priori, although the specific doctrine of innate knowledge presented in the Meno finds new takers today, the more general view that we know some things a priori, prior to experience, is still widely held. So yes, a priori knowledge is knowledge that one can have prior to experience, which means you don't have to necessarily, and this is okay, what a priori knowledge means is that you don't necessarily have to have an empirical experience in order to know it. So here, let me just keep, because I keep going off on a tangent. I think that they're going to explain it, so let me just read it first. So mathematics, all right, great. Mathematics in particular is thought to exemplify this sort of knowledge. Perfect, yes. Mathematical knowledge is a priori knowledge, knowledge prior to experience. So we don't arrive at theorems in geometry or arithmetic by conducting empirical research. We establish truths of this sort simply by reasoning. Socrates may prove this theorem using a diagram drawn with a stick in the dirt, but we understand immediately that the theorem is necessarily and universally true. It applies to all squares, regardless of how big they are and what they are made of, when they exist, or where they exist. Okay, so this is super important. So the knowledge that we have innately that's being uncovered is a priori knowledge, which means knowledge prior to experience. It's closely related to analytic statements. So mathematics are analytic statements that we can have a priori knowledge of when we analyze them. So what this means is that essentially, so Socrates may prove his theorem by using a diagram drawn with a stick in the dirt. So what this means is that we can use the world of space-time to try and transmit these ideas. We can draw on the dirt in the example of the theorem. We can write down the theorem, and of course we're doing this in the space-time dimension of the holos. And we can also use the medium of the holos, of space-time, to be able to transmit this information from one person talking to another. I'm conversating right now. It's kind of a one-sided conversation, but I am with you right now, and I'm transmitting information. So we are using this sort of contingent medium of the holos to transmit information to each other. But when it's a priori knowledge, this information comes prior to experience, meaning that, like it says here, regardless of the fact that I'm using a piece of paper to write down a theorem, or I'm telling you, it's necessarily and universally true. It applies to all squares, regardless of how big they are, what they're made of, when they exist, or where they exist. So the idea of, say, 2 + 2 = 4, this is a priori knowledge. Now, I can teach you 2 + 2 = 4, but when I teach you 2 + 2 = 4, what I'm doing is uncovering what's already there. And now, of course, you have to have the faculties to be able to do this, because you are in an avatar. And if your avatar is impaired in some way, if you have brain damage or something like this, you're in a coma, right? If your avatar is damaged and you are impaired, you're not going to be able to process this information. But, considering if your avatar is in good shape, you'll be able to, receive this information. And what this will do is allow the unconscious to become conscious, and you will uncover the idea that 2 + 2 = 4. And because this is a priori knowledge, what this means is that it's true eternally, and you don't have to go out and check. So, for example, like another one is that triangles have 3 sides. That's another a priori eternal truth. So if I teach you that triangles have all sides, have 3 sides, this is knowledge that's already within you, that's being uncovered. And when you gain this knowledge consciously, and you understand 100% that triangles have 3 sides, you don't have to go out and check to make sure that's true. You don't have to go try and find all the triangles in the world and verify that they have three sides. If you know that triangles have 3 sides, you know that that's universally true. It's true everywhere for all time, etc. Triangles have 3 sides. That's true by definition. Now, now keep in mind that type of knowledge is very different from a posteriori knowledge, which is knowledge that one gains from experience. So the knowledge that triangles have 3 sides and me uncovering that innate idea within you is very different from me saying, for example, it's raining outside. Now, it's raining outside. That's not innate within you. You don't have this. You see how this is a very different type of knowledge. This is now contingent, empirical, a posteriori, synthetic. So you don't have within you unconsciously this idea that it's raining outside. But you do have within you unconsciously this idea of 2 + 2 = 4. And you can know this. You have it within you prior to experience. Now, the idea that it's raining outside, if I tell you that it's raining outside, well, what do you have to do? You have to look outside and check to see if that's true. It's just not universally true. And the other thing, it's very different that it's raining outside. It might be true for me. It might be raining outside for me. But guess what? It might not be true for you. Depending on where you are, it might not be raining outside for you. And it might not be raining on the other side of the earth. And it wasn't maybe not raining 2 hours from now or 2 hours prior. And it might not be raining, the next day. So the idea that it's raining outside is a posteriori. It's contingent, it's synthetic, meaning that it's not universally true. It's not true forever, for all time. It's not an innate idea. This is empirical contingent data. So you see, it's very different from something like 2 + 2 = 4. And the reason why this is important is because the way that reality, all the important facets of reality, as far as formal reality and how reality is structured, like the fact that reality is mathematical, that it's a mental reality composed of frequencies, that you are a mathematical mind, that we are headed towards the omega point on a path of transformation. These are all innate ideas that are universally, eternally true. Like 2 + 2 = 4, just like that. But the fact that it's raining outside, that's different. That's contingent data. That's like, that, oh, well, particularly the planet Earth will form and a country known as America will develop and it will go to war with such and so will be president. And then, this will happen and these wars will start. That's all contingent data. That's not necessary. That's not eternally true. These are particular instances that may or may not occur, but all within the context and the framework of that overarching code and information that you have innately. So many readers complain that the boy does not really discover how to double the area of a square himself. Socrates guides him to the answer with leading questions. This is true. The boy would probably not have arrived at the answer by himself, but this objection misses the deeper point of the demonstration. The boy is not simply learning a formula that he repeats without real understanding, the way most of us are doing when we say something like E = mc². When he agrees that a certain proposition is true or an inference is valid, he does so because he grasps the truth of the matter for himself. In principle, therefore, he could discover the theorem in question, and many others, just by thinking very hard, and so could we all. So, in a nutshell, the objection is, well, wait a minute, the boy didn't learn it himself. Socrates taught it to him. That's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. But what's happening is that Socrates is uncovering that knowledge that is already there, yes, through teaching. But the important thing to understand is that when one really truly learns in this way, one should understand what it actually means rather than just regurgitating something. And they use the example of E = mc². I mean, I and probably most of you, or some of you at least, know what E = mc² refers to, but a lot of people don't. They just say it like, oh yeah, E = mc², and sure, that's true. But they don't understand this, association with matter to light speed squared, and they don't know what it is or what it means. But the point is here is that Socrates is allowing the lad to grasp the truth for himself, to really understand it, and thereby it's being uncovered in his mind. And the idea is that he theoretically could have come to it himself. He could have. If he wanted to, if he sat there thinking very hard about it, is what they're saying, eventually he could have come to that conclusion with the help of Socrates. But that's the idea of sort of, like what I'm doing and what teachers of Hyperianism are doing. That's what we do. We're making the unconscious conscious. That's what we're doing in Hyperianism. That's what we're trying to do. We said we want to transform the world. We want to transform the universe, create a new humanity and a new earth. And how are we doing that? Through a revolution of consciousness. We have to transform the world via consciousness. And how we are doing that is making the unconscious conscious. So our grand task is the uncovering of that information that is already there. So that's what we're doing. Everything that we talk about in Hyperianism, you could have come to yourself. And you would have, after, probably many lifetimes of incarnations or localizations and going through it. But Hyperianism and what we're doing here is just speeding up the process, just like Socrates sped up the process for the boy learning that geometry. Maybe it would have taken the boy, 60 years to come to that conclusion, or maybe he never would have. Maybe he would have been a different life. But that's the point here, is what we're doing in Hyperianism is all this information. It's already in you. You have it. It's you. It's part of you. We're just helping facilitate that process of uncovering it and bringing it into consciousness so you can truly start to become who you are and understand where you are and what you are and truly start to live. Because you'll finally have that understanding and that knowledge of what this place is, why you're here. A lot of people don't even ask that question. They don't care. They don't give a shit. They don't know why they're here. They don't know what they are. They don't even know what the question is. They don't even understand. What do you mean, where are we? It's just, I'm in a house. I'm on Earth. What do you mean? No, people miss the fact that reality is exceedingly strange if you don't know what it is. But once you know what it is, it's grand and majestic and extremely fascinating. But you understand where you are, what you are, why you're here. And again, that's all within you already. It's there, just like the geometry, the answer to the geometry was already in the boy's mind. It just has to be uncovered and the truth has to be grasped. That's what we're doing here in Hyperionism, right here and right now. And ultimately, this is what will change the world. And this is why we want to say we want to create a new humanity and a new earth. How? Through the elevation of consciousness. And why does that create a new earth? Because once humanity understands these necessary and eternal truths, this will lead to the creation of a new world. Because the only reason why we have all this division, and we have all this bloodshed, we have all this hatred, we have all this homophobia, is because humanity is in a very low level of consciousness. They have mere self-awareness. They haven't achieved hyper-awareness. Once you achieve hyper-awareness, all that melts away because you understand that all this division is unnecessary. All this fragmentation is ridiculous. It's insane. It's a madhouse. People are going around killing each other just because they don't like how another person dresses or expresses themselves or who they fuck. It's ridiculous. People are insane. This world's a madhouse. We don't have to be doing this because once we really realize that we're all in this together, that this is a feedback loop, that we all exist in that network, then we don't have to fight anymore because we realize that we're just fighting ourselves because ultimately we are all reflections of each other in this network. And once you really start to understand that, you also understand, since we're on the topic of learning and all that, is that learning is teaching and teaching is learning. Because ultimately, from the absolute perspective, there's many different perspectives to take in Hyperionism. There's the avatar perspective, the monadic perspective, and the absolute perspective. But if you take that unified perspective of us as a network mind, as us as a singular network mind, remember, we are a multiplicity of monadic minds as a singular network mind, a one and many simultaneously. And in that capacity, when I teach you, I'm actually learning because we're in a feedback loop. Because when you learn, you see, I am learning as well because we are all reflections of each other. So it's a feedback loop. Teaching is learning and learning is teaching from the absolute perspective because we're teaching ourselves. If I'm teaching you something, I'm teaching myself. If you're teaching someone else something, you're teaching yourself. And right now, as I'm, as I am teaching you, you're teaching yourself because I am you and you are me from the network perspective, not from the monadic perspective. We have individual, independent existence from a monadic perspective, but from the absolute network perspective, in this interconnected network mind, we are all in this process of self-teaching and self-uncovering. And that's a big reason why this evolution of consciousness will transform the world, because we will know that it's not in our favor to harm each other, because we're really just harming ourselves, because we are a multiplicity within a network. We are the network. So we don't want to just be destroying ourselves because we're harming us as the network. So this is why, one reason why, and if this, if you've never heard this before, that particular aspect that might seem very new to you, go check out my videos. I have a lot of videos on the subject. So that, not something we can get into right now because we're already running out of time. But this is the important idea. All of this, reincarnation, relocalization, we're all in this process of uncovering what is already there. All this, you already know everything. You already know what reality is, where it's going, but it's unconscious. The reason why you know it is because you are it. It is you. But it's all unconscious. So through this process of reincarnation, relocalization, we're uncovering what is unconscious into consciousness, and also exploring our various contingent transformations on this grand journey that we're all in this together, where we're able to experience our multiplicity but let's make it something enjoyable, right? Let's make it, that's why we want to transform the world, because it's really hellish right now, because it's the world's a madhouse. It's insane. And I can't express it enough. I feel like I can't. I try very hard to express how insane the world is. And I think people think it's hyperbole. Like, oh yeah, the world's a crazy place. No, it's mad. People believe in these insane stories, and they are killing each other by the multitudes every single day. There's rape and murder, and it's a fucking madhouse. And so, yeah, I really get why, some people just want to escape. But the idea here is it doesn't have to be this way. The only reason why it is this way is because people are completely blind as to what they are, where they are, why they're here. They don't even care. So we can absolutely transform the world. Look what happened when we went from an animalistic, instinctual stage to self-awareness. The reality for us was drastically changed. We went from, living as animals, hunting and killing each other, to creating cities and structures and technology, smartphones. And so huge transformation. Likewise, as the goal of Hyperionism unfolds and humanity reaches hyper-awareness, it will change in ways well beyond that humanity can imagine. Just like an animal can't imagine what it is to live in a city and use an iPhone and, everything that goes along with being human. So humans cannot understand what it's like to be hyper-aware, but we can bring them there. We can get them to that level, and everything will change. This place will go from being a nightmare to being something beautiful. But it's important, right? This is crucial that we have that elevation of consciousness to hyper-awareness. Because if people don't really understand what hyper-awareness is, if they don't really get it, or they think it's something that it's not, then you're going to have a disaster, because you'll have people claiming that they know what it is, and they'll be transforming the world in a very bad direction. So that's why Hyperionism, education is paramount. Education is important, because we want to make sure that the leaders of tomorrow know exactly what reality is, what existence is, and so we can truly begin to build a beautiful new world and not something false. We want to create something beautiful, and this is why true education, spreading this information, is paramount. It's a revolution of consciousness. We're in a war of the mind, and that is our mission. Transform humanity, create a new earth, and institute new Terra. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports on Patreon, especially Cassidy, Alana, Renaissance Fairy, Michael, Alan, and Evie is our newest gold tier supporter. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Patreon is the best way to support my work. And if you feel like you've ever learned something from my videos, consider supporting on Patreon. You help me out, I help you out, we help the world out. It's a feedback loop. Really, really appreciate it. You'll get access to our hidden Discord server, the Citadel. You'll get access to our weekly secret live streams and a lot more. It's patreon.com/MorgueOfficial. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Should be a link somewhere around here that pops up.